He was known as Matthew, the tax collector. But did you know that this quiet, unlikely man would later become one of the most influential figures in Christianity? Matthew's story is one of transformation, from an outcast serving Roman interests to a devoted disciple of Jesus, who would go on to write the gospel that now bears his name. So how did a man despised by society end up walking beside the Messiah? Let's dive into the incredible life of the Apostle Matthew. Before becoming a disciple, Matthew's world revolved around money. He was a Jewish man who worked for the Roman Empire, collecting taxes from his fellow Israelites. Tax collectors were known to take more than required, pocketing the difference. Because of this, Matthew was seen as a traitor and a sinner. The people hated him. How could he serve their oppressors and profit from his neighbors' suffering, they would say. His Hebrew name was Levi, hinting that he may have come from the tribe of Levi, a tribe set apart for holy service to God. Yet, Matthew seemed far from holy. He lived in Capernaum, a city on the Sea of Galilee, where Roman influence was strong, and so were the tensions between Jews and Gentiles. While others spent their time at synagogues, Matthew spent his days behind a tax booth, disconnected from his heritage and community. Then one day, everything changed. Matthew was sitting at his booth, collecting taxes as usual, when Jesus approached. Jesus was becoming known throughout the region as a miracle worker and teacher of his apostles. As Matthew watched from the sidelines, in his loneliness, with a hope to a more meaningful life, he probably thought, "This man is for the righteous, not for me." But what happened next was unexpected. Jesus looked right at Matthew and said, "Follow me." That was it. No sermon, no rebuke for his past. Just 2 words. And Matthew, without hesitation, stood up, left everything behind, and followed him. Matthew's decision was shocking. He gave up a lucrative career, his only source of security, to follow someone who offered no financial reward. Why did Matthew follow so readily? Perhaps he saw in Jesus what he'd been longing for all along, a chance for redemption, a fresh start, and a place to belong. Becoming one of Jesus' disciples wasn't easy for Matthew. At first, he was an outsider even among the 12. Peter, James, and John were fishermen, rough and skeptical of this former tax collector in their midst, until they were finally able to warm up to a changed man. But Matthew wasn't just tagging along. He was watching, learning, and carefully recording everything he saw. Some scholars believe that Matthew's natural skill with numbers and details gave him a unique gift for recording the teachings of Jesus. Shortly after Matthew began following Jesus, he threw a banquet at his home. He invited other tax collectors and so-called sinners to dine with Jesus. When the Pharisees saw this, they were outraged. "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" they asked. But Jesus answered, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." And that was the heart of the gospel that Matthew would later write. Jesus came for everyone, even those who seemed farthest from God. Matthew's gospel, written years after Jesus' resurrection, is one of the 4 gospels that recount the life and teachings of Jesus. Scholars believe it was aimed at a Jewish audience, emphasizing that Jesus is the fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy. Matthew's Gospel includes the Sermon on the Mount, the Great Commission, and detailed genealogies tracing Jesus' lineage back to King David and Abraham. This Gospel wasn't just a historical record, it was a message of hope to the Jewish people and the world. The Messiah has come, and his kingdom is open to all. After the apostles divided their missionary fields, Matthew's lot fell on Ethiopia. He preached the gospel and built a thriving Christian community. His work brought many people to faith, including members of the royal court. However, his mission would take a dangerous turn when a new ruler rose to power. The new king, Eutychus, sought to marry the late king's daughter, Iphigenia, to consolidate his power. But Matthew, in accordance with God's law, condemned the marriage as unlawful. His boldness angered the king, who saw Matthew as an obstacle to his ambitions. Furious at being defied, Eutychus sent an assassin to kill Matthew during the Holy Liturgy. According to tradition, Matthew was either pierced with a sword or burned at the stake, dying a martyr for his faith. Matthew had left behind wealth and privilege, embracing a life of service and sacrifice in the name of Christ, even unto death. Matthew's journey, from a simple man to saint, from tax collector to disciple, is a testimony of God's transforming power. His life encourages us to step out in faith, leaving behind our past and embracing the future God has in store for us. Just as Jesus called Matthew, he calls each of us today, "Follow me." Will you answer that call? Thank you for watching. If this story inspired you, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos on the lives of Jesus' disciples.